Our first image is coming from New York, and this is the picture that we're going to be focusing on. So the way that we build vocabulary is very practical. We do it by naming and describing the things around us. So let's have a go with this first picture. One of the most obvious things that comes to mind when looking at this picture is that it's a city. And the word for city in Spanish is ciudad. Literally sounds like that, ciudad. So we have 3 syllables. We have ciudad. And this word is ending in a consonant. So I can tell you that it's classified as a feminine word. So the city would be la ciudad or una ciudad, a city. To create a pathway back to the memory, just imagine yourself on the sidewalk saying ciudad, and it will help you to remember the word. The next thing that comes to mind is that we have a street here, a wide street, and the word for street in Spanish is calle. So the pronunciation is just 2 syllables, calle. So we have ca here, and this double L creates a Y, so with the E, yeah. Calle is street, the word for street, calle. And it's a feminine word, so the street would be la calle. So far we have 2 feminine words associated with city. We have la ciudad for the city and la calle for the street. If there's one thing New York has a lot of, it's buildings. And the word for that is edificios. Here we have it in plural. So we have edificios, ending in the S. If we just wanted to say building, then it would be like that, edificio. But buildings, we just add the S for the plural, edificios. To help you remember this word, what you can imagine or visualize is Eddie doing physio, like physiotherapy, in an office building. So we have Eddie for Eddie, and then physio kind of sounds like physiotherapy. So if you visualize Eddie doing physiotherapy in an office building, just close your eyes and visualize that for a minute or so. It will help to create a pathway back to the word for buildings, edificio, and of course that we know to make the plural, we just add S, so it would be edificios. Next up, we have the word for people, and that's an easy word in Spanish. It's gente. Gente. This GE has like a H sound, gente. So gente is people in Spanish, and it's a feminine word, so the people would be la gente. Notice that in English, the English spelling or pronunciation looks like gent, so you can imagine a lot of gents in the street and can help to lead you back to the memory of gente for people. The next word that comes to mind is traffic, and certainly a lot of that in New York as well. This is a word we came across in level 1 when we were going through our cognates. So traffic would be tráfico. Notice that we have an accent over the A, so it would be tráfico, but here we stress the A, so tráfico up the front. And it's ending in O, so it's going to be a masculine word. So the traffic would be el tráfico. Next up, we have taxis. And this is probably the easiest word to remember of all because it's exactly the same in Spanish. Taxis is taxis. You have just a slight difference in the pronunciation. Taxis, they would say it like that. So taxis would also be a masculine word. So it would be los taxis for the taxis, or el taxi for the taxi. Another prominent feature of this image is the sidewalk. So to say sidewalk in Spanish would be acera. So what we can do is visualize acera, like the name Sarah, walking on the sidewalk. Just 2 syllables, acera. Acera is the sidewalk. It's a feminine word because it's ending in A. So visualize Sarah or acera walking on the sidewalk as a pathway back to the memory of that word, acera. The word for sky is a very pretty word in Spanish. It's cielo. So we have cielo. cielo. To help remember it, to create the pathway back, you could visualize yourself looking up into the sky and seeing a halo. So we have C and halo there. It's to give you clues back to the word for sky, cielo. Notice where it's ending in O, so it must be masculine word. The sky would be el cielo. On the left of the picture, we can see trees. And the word for trees is árboles. There's a few things to notice here. First of all, we have an accent right at the front of the word. So you wouldn't say árboles where you're stressing this part, or árboles where you're stressing the end, but árboles. The push comes at the front of the word where the accent is, árboles. Also, it's ending in a consonant, right? It's ending in L. So to say tree would be like that, árbol. And it's a masculine word classified as masculine. So the tree would be el árbol or a tree, un árbol. But we don't see a tree in the picture. We see plural, we see trees. So if you remember the lesson from plurals before, we add on an es to get the plural because this is ending in a consonant. So trees would be árboles. And because it's masculine, it would be los árboles, the trees. Right in front of us and all the way down, we can see a series of traffic lights. And this is not the easiest word in Spanish to remember. It would be semáforos, semáforos. So the accent is important in the middle of the word for the correct pronunciation, semáforos. So we have sem, a, foros. Semáforos is traffic lights. And it's ending in O here. You can see the S has been added for the plural, so it's a masculine word. So the traffic lights would be los semáforos. Smack in the middle of the picture, we can see people crossing a zebra crossing or pedestrian crossing. So the word for that in Spanish is paso de peatones. So we're going to need something definitely to help us recall this. So what I was thinking is that you pay a ton to cross the road. You're visualizing that it costs a lot of money. You pay a ton of money to cross the road. So I'm really focusing on this word here. If we look at it, it's peatones. So as a link back to that, I'm thinking pay a ton. So you pay a ton to cross the road. Peatones. Here we have paso, which is easy. Paso de. And then pedestrians is actually peatones. So pedestrian pathway in Spanish. They describe it in that way. So zebra crossing or pedestrian crossing would be paso de peatones. And we pay a ton, peatones, to cross the road. To say the zebra crossing or a zebra crossing, it would be just el at the front of that. So el paso de peatones would be the zebra crossing or the pedestrian crossing. There are a lot of buildings in this image and also a lot of windows. The word for windows is ventanas. So what you can do is visualize Ben eating sultanas in the window. Gives you that link back. So we have Ben at the front and tanas reminds me of sultanas. So Ben eating sultanas leaning against the window. If you visualize that for 30, 60 seconds, can help create a pathway back to ventanas. Here we have a feminine word that's plural, right? Because ventana would be window. So la ventana, the window. But here in this image, we're seeing plural, a lot of windows. So we simply add the S and we get ventanas. The windows will be las ventanas. Now that we have some vocabulary with this image, it's very important that you're able to access that vocabulary in the future. So this is why we try and create pathways back to where the memory is stored. What you do is close your eyes and visualize as vividly as you can the little clue or the pathway that I've given you for some of these words. Also, you can feel free to change them and to make your own pathways, or where I haven't given you a pathway because it didn't occur to me immediately at the time, you can try to create your own. So what you're doing is making a series of clues or pathways that can help you remember the word. When it comes time to remember the word, so you're saying, well, okay, well, there's a pedestrian crossing. How did I say, or how do you say pedestrian crossing in Spanish? You don't try and remember the word, you try and remember what it is that you visualized, the little image, this little story that you associated with that word. So what I remember is, okay, well, you pay a ton to cross the road. And so it gives me a clue back to peatón, peatones. And that is often all you need. Just that little tiny clue is enough to lead you back to the memory. So this is how you can remember words not only 5 minutes from now, but a week from now, a month from now, so forth. It's a way to find the word again where it's stored in your memory. And you only need to do it a few times. Once you locate it a few times, trying it that way, you'll find that your brain gives it to you instantly from there on. Let's review the vocabulary for this lesson. Remember to pause the video so that you can give yourself time to remember your pathway back to the word if you created one. First of all, how would you say city? Ciudad. And it's a feminine word, so it would be la ciudad. Street. Calle. Again, feminine word, la calle. Buildings. Edificios. Or if it was single, it would be edificio. People. Gente. We have la gente for the people. Traffic. Tráfico. Taxis. Taxis. Sidewalk. Acera. Sky. Cielo. Trees. Árboles. If we wanted to say tree, remember, it would be árbol, but plural, árboles. Masculine word, so los árboles. Traffic lights. Semáforos. Zebra crossing. Paso de peatones. Windows. Ventanas. In a previous lesson, we came across a very useful little word, and that was I. The H is silent, so we're just pronouncing from here. Sounds like the English I. Now this little word I means there is, but also there are. So we have both there is and there are in I. Do you remember how to say people? Gente. How would you say there are people? Hay gente. If we wanted to say I can see people, in Spanish they would normally say I can see the people. It's more natural to say it that way. So how would you say I can see people? Puedo ver la gente. It's important to remember that gente is a feminine word, classified as feminine, so it would be la gente. How would you say there is traffic? Hay tráfico. I can see traffic. Puedo ver el tráfico. Again, we have another example of how in English we will often say I can see traffic, but in Spanish it sounds much more natural to say I can see the traffic. Puedo ver el tráfico. How would you say there's a lot of traffic today? Hay mucho tráfico hoy. Mucho, again, is a very useful word and can mean much or a lot of. Hay, there is a lot of, mucho, tráfico hoy. Returning back to the word for people, we have gente. And we know that gente is classed as a feminine word, so it would be la gente. Now there's something interesting that takes place. If we wanted to say a lot of people, it would be mucha gente. This is a classic example of how Spanish takes every opportunity it can to agree. So we have gente being a feminine word, la gente. So therefore, this mucho changes to mucha to match this feminine word. So a lot of people would be mucha gente. How would you say a lot of traffic? Mucho tráfico. Here we're dealing with a masculine word ending in o, so el tráfico. So that's why mucho is going to match with it. Mucho tráfico, but it would be mucha gente. As you can see, whether a word is classified as masculine or feminine affects other things in the sentence, because Spanish really loves to agree and takes every opportunity in the sentence to do so. How would you say buildings? Edificios. And the buildings? Los edificios. There's something else now that's interesting to do with mucho. If we wanted to say a lot of buildings, it would be muchos edificios. Here again, muchos is agreeing with edificios. So we have, breaking it down, starting out, say, with, let's go from here and just do it live on the screen. So we have edificio is building. So it would be el edificio. Ending in o, it's a masculine word. Now, the buildings, this changes to los, and we add an s, so it would be los edificios. Now, if you want to say a lot of buildings, instead of mucho edificios, even mucho becomes plural, so it goes to muchos edificios. Let's recap now and just go through it once more. How would you say a lot of traffic? Mucho tráfico. A lot of people. Mucha gente. A lot of buildings. Muchos edificios. What is the word for window? Ventana. How would you say the windows? Las ventanas. Now, how would you say a lot of windows? Muchas ventanas. So hopefully you got that one right, because we have here a feminine word in plural. Ventana is window and ventanas is windows, so it's feminine and it's plural. Therefore, mucho will also try to adopt and reflect that characteristic, because we're talking or expressing something relating to a feminine word in plural, so this goes to muchas as well. Muchas ventanas. So here we have the complete set. We have mucho and muchos for a masculine word, single and plural. And then we also have mucha and muchas for a feminine word, single and plural. You'll find yourself using mucho and these variations a lot, because it's very common to say a lot of this or that, or much of this, things like that. So it's important that you understand that even mucho will change to reflect what you're talking about and whether the word is masculine or feminine, single or plural. How would you say there are a lot of windows? Hay muchas ventanas. there's a lot of traffic. Hay mucho tráfico. The word for New York is Nueva York. So New York is Nueva York. Try to say, there's a lot of traffic in New York. Hay mucho tráfico en Nueva York. Do you remember the word for trees? Árboles. Árboles. How would you say the trees? Los árboles. So we have here a masculine word in plural. How would you say there are a lot of trees here? Hay muchos árboles aquí. What about I can see a lot of trees? Puedo ver muchos árboles. Finally, how would you say the tree? El árbol. I'd like to briefly return back to the word gente because it's treated in a different way when compared to English. So in Spanish we say la gente, which means that it's singular. The people is treated as a singular thing. Now, in English we treat it as plural because we have person, that's singular, and people as plural. But in Spanish, they don't do that. La gente is treated as a singular thing, and that affects other things in the sentence which we need to be aware of. So let's try and illustrate that point now. The verb to walk is caminar. Caminar. Caminar is to walk. To remember it, you might think of, say, a camel walking. You have caminar, to walk. How would you say walking with the ing there? Caminando. So we have caminar as an AR verb, and for that ing, the ing tense, it goes to ando. Remember we had ando and yendo. So caminar, caminando. How would you say I am walking? Estoy caminando. If we wanted to say the people are walking, it would be la gente está caminando. Now, hopefully you caught that, because in English we'd say la gente están caminando, meaning the people, they are walking. The people are walking, the people, they are walking. And están in Spanish is they are. But in Spanish, la gente is singular, it's not plural. And for that reason, we would say la gente está caminando. And in English, the translation sounds strange because that would translate to the people is walking. La gente está caminando. Now, it can be a bit strange to get used to at first, but after a little while, because you'll find yourself using gente quite a lot, you'll get used to it. What's the word for sidewalk? Acera. The sidewalk? La acera. To say on the sidewalk, we have a choice in Spanish. We can say por la acera or en la acera. Both ways are correct. But for the rest of this module, I'm going to use the first choice here, por. So anytime we want to express on the sidewalk, on the road, on the pedestrian crossing, we'll elect to use this first option here, por. In the next module, we'll switch over and we'll start using en so that you can get used to using both ways. However, for this module where we're in the city and we're walking on the streets or on the sidewalk, on the pedestrian crossing, it's just a little bit more correct and widely accepted to say por instead of en. So how would you say the people are walking on the sidewalk? La gente está caminando por la acera. Let's break it down. So we have the people, la gente. And then we use está, is walking, because la gente is singular. La gente está caminando. The people are walking on the sidewalk por la acera. Try to say, I want to walk on the sidewalk. Quiero caminar por la acera. Do you remember the word for street? Calle. Calle. And if it's feminine or masculine? It's feminine. La calle. If you get that wrong, saying that a word is masculine instead of feminine or vice versa when you're speaking Spanish, it's really not that big of a mistake and you'll still be understood. So don't worry or overstress about it too much. As you make contact with the words over and over again, you're going to find that it just comes to you whether it's masculine or feminine. But in the early stages, if you mix them up and get some of them wrong, don't worry or overstress about it too much because it's really not that big a mistake to make. How would you say now, the people are walking on the street? La gente está caminando por la calle. So here we have la calle, meaning the street. How would you say the streets? Las calles. Let's break this one down. So the singular would be la calle. And la goes to las in the plural for a feminine word. And because this word ends in a vowel, all we need to do is add an S. So, las calles, the streets. Let's add a very useful verb into the mix of this vocabulary. So we have here to cross, and that would be cruzar. So it's not that difficult to remember. Cruzar is to cross. So we have an AR verb, cruzar. How would you say crossing with that ing? Cruzando. Cruzando is crossing. How would you say, I need to cross the street? Necesito cruzar la calle. What about the people are crossing the street? La gente está cruzando la calle. What's the word for zebra crossing? Paso de peatones. Do you remember if it's masculine or feminine? It's masculine. El paso de peatones. What's the verb to use? Usar. And using? Usando. How would you say the people are using the zebra crossing? La gente está usando el paso de peatones. The people are walking on the zebra crossing. La gente está caminando por el paso de peatones. The people are crossing the street on the zebra crossing. La gente está cruzando la calle por el paso de peatones. Let's break it down. So we have the people, la gente, and the people are crossing. In Spanish they say the people is crossing. La gente está cruzando, and the street, la calle. Then we have an opportunity here to say on the zebra crossing or on the pedestrian crossing, we bring in por el paso de peatones. Try to say, the people are walking on the sidewalk. La gente está caminando por la acera. The verb to wait is esperar. Esperar is to wait. How would you say waiting? Esperando. So we took esperar, we add the ando for ing. Esperando is waiting. How would you say I have to wait? Tengo que esperar. The people are waiting. La gente está esperando. Here again we're saying the people is waiting. La gente está esperando. How would you say the people have to wait? La gente tiene que esperar. The taxis have to wait. Los taxis tienen que esperar. Let's take a little time out here. So here we have a plural, los taxis. So we say the taxis, they have to wait. Los taxis tienen que esperar. But before we had the people have to wait, and it's treated as singular, la gente. And that's why we used tiene que esperar. So we have single with tiene que esperar and plural with tienen que esperar. Here's a final challenge for you. How would you say the taxis have to wait because the people are crossing the street on the pedestrian crossing? Los taxis tienen que esperar porque la gente está cruzando la calle por el paso de peatones. Let's examine this step by step. So we have, first of all, the taxis, los taxis. The taxis have to wait, they have to wait. Los taxis tienen que esperar because the people, porque la gente, are crossing the street. Está cruzando la calle on the zebra crossing por el paso de peatones. Let's continue now with the word for city. How would you say that in Spanish? Ciudad. And is it masculine or feminine? It's feminine. La ciudad. How would you say New York is a city? Nueva York es una ciudad. With a lot of people and a lot of traffic. Con mucha gente y mucho tráfico. The word for car is carro. We have a rolling of the R in the middle. Carro is car. We came across this word before, caro, which means expensive. So it's a very subtle difference between the two. We have caro, where you don't roll the R, meaning expensive, and carro, where you roll the R to say car. So how would you say the car? El carro. And cars? Carros. How would you say the cars? Los carros. The cars have to wait. Los carros tienen que esperar. The cars have to wait when the people are walking on the zebra crossing. Los carros tienen que esperar cuando la gente está caminando por el paso de peatones. We have the cars have to wait. Los carros tienen que esperar. When the people, cuando la gente are walking, está caminando. On the zebra crossing, por el paso de peatones. How would you say a lot of cars? Muchos carros. People are crossing the street and the cars have to wait. La gente está cruzando la calle y los carros tienen que esperar. In English, we often say like people are crossing, but remember in Spanish, it's more natural to say the people are crossing. La gente está cruzando la calle and the cars have to wait y los carros tienen que esperar. A very useful little word is a veces. A veces. This can mean sometimes, occasionally, at times, once in a while. All of that is expressed with a veces, literally at times. How would you say sometimes the people have to wait? A veces la gente tiene que esperar. Let's see if you can recall how to say the word traffic lights. Semáforos. And the traffic lights? Los semáforos. How would you say a lot of traffic lights? Muchos semáforos. I can see a lot of traffic lights. Puedo ver muchos semáforos. There are a lot of traffic lights. Hay muchos semáforos. In English, we'll say something like the traffic lights are red or the traffic lights are green. In Spanish, to express this, they would say the traffic lights are in red or are in green. And this is los semáforos están en rojo. So rojo is red. So it would be the traffic lights, los semáforos, están is they are, están en rojo, they are in red. The word for green in Spanish is verde, verde. How would you say the traffic lights are green? Los semáforos están en verde. The traffic has to wait because the traffic lights are red. El tráfico tiene que esperar porque los semáforos están en rojo. The word for always is nice and easy in Spanish. It's siempre. Siempre means always. Try to say, there's always a lot of traffic in New York. Hay siempre mucho tráfico en Nueva York. Now, if you said it that way, you would be understood without any problems. But it's more natural with the word siempre to put it way up front and to actually start the sentence with it. So it could be siempre hay mucho tráfico en Nueva York. That would sound much more natural. So in English we have there's always, with the always here. But in Spanish, they would put this way up front. Siempre, for example, always, there's a lot of traffic in New York. Siempre hay mucho tráfico en Nueva York. Now try to say, you can always see a lot of people. Siempre Puedes ver mucha gente. So here again in English, we put always more towards the middle, where in Spanish, they put it way up front. Always you can see, siempre puedes ver, then a lot of people, mucha gente. In this video, we're going to activate a lot of that vocabulary now and return back to our original picture for New York. So I'm sure now when you look at this picture, you should feel much more empowered to be able to talk about it and describe not only what you see, but also what's going on, the actions of the picture, as well as the vocabulary for what this is or what that is. This is how vocabulary and verbs empower you. They give you this feeling that you can actually express and talk about things in Spanish. So let's go and try some of this now. First of all, how would you say it's a city? Es una ciudad. I can see lots of buildings. Puedo ver muchos edificios. Many people are walking on the sidewalk. Mucha gente está caminando por la acera. A taxi has to wait because people are crossing the street. Un taxi tiene que esperar porque la gente está cruzando la calle. There's a lot of cars and a lot of traffic. Hay muchos carros y mucho tráfico. There's always a lot of traffic in New York. Siempre hay mucho tráfico en Nueva York. A lot of people are walking on the sidewalk. Mucha gente está caminando por la acera. Sometimes people want to cross the street and the cars have to wait because the traffic lights are red. A veces la gente quiere cruzar la calle y los carros tienen que esperar porque los semáforos están en rojo. The sky is gray today. El cielo está gris hoy. Can you see the trees? ¿Puedes ver los árboles? People are crossing the street. La gente está cruzando la calle. People are using the zebra crossing. La gente está usando el paso de peatones. The traffic has to wait because people are crossing the street. El tráfico tiene que esperar porque la gente está cruzando la calle. The buildings have a lot of windows. Los edificios tienen muchas ventanas. As we go through more and more of these pictures, learning not only to identify what we see in them, but also the actions of what's happening inside the images, you'll find that your vocabulary really starts to grow and grow strongly, because we're learning to describe real things, everyday things that we see around us. You'll also find that I have to explain less and less, because you're automatically learning a lot about Spanish by having to deal with the task of describing the actions of what's going on inside the image. So the next time we have a different image, I won't need to spend time teaching you about mucho and muchos, mucha, muchas, or many other different things, because you'll already have learned it from this series. So we're going to be doing a lot of images and varying them quite a lot. And you'll find that probably after about we do 10 of these, that you really start to feel empowered more and more, that you can talk about the world around you and the actions that are going on with what you see. And this is going to give you a really nice sense of achievement in Spanish, and it's going to make you feel like you're really getting somewhere, or finally getting somewhere. So give it about 10 images, 10 series for that feeling to start to really kick in. But I'm sure even just now, from the first time we looked at this image to looking at it now, you should feel a sense of empowerment that before you really couldn't say very much about it, and now you can actually say quite intelligent things about what you're seeing.